Thank you for joining me this evening for a wonderful discussion about something that I believe affects all of us. I want to thank my producer, Mr. Blay, and all our listeners. I will encourage you to ask people to join us because we've got an interesting package. A whole new series of topics are going to be discussed, and I believe that will go a long way to help you. By way of introduction, I am an interventional cardiologist and endovascular doctor. That means that apart from general cardiology, I specialize in opening up blockages of blood vessels, either veins or arteries in the heart and in the other parts of the body. Anything below the neck is something that I do essentially. So thank you for joining me, and I believe that is going to go a very long way to help you to understand the discussions, to understand some of the discussions that goes on out there, because there's a lot of information out there that can be inundating, but I can promise you that to the best of our ability, anything that we're going to tell you over here is based on well-researched data, and as much as possible, we'll try to cut out anything that hasn't got a lot of data behind it. So today we want to talk about glycemic index. So why are we talking about it? Because we were talking about it because another paper was recently published in New England Journal that went to sort of strengthen our knowledge about glycemic index, and more importantly, it moved the frontier, it moved it into a different frontier in terms of cardiovascular outcomes. So before I bother you a lot, what is the meaning of glycemic index? What is the meaning of glycemic index? So this is a quiz question that we're going to throw out to people, and hopefully you can come back to us with your questions as much as possible. What are the three types of carbohydrates that you know of? What are the three types of carbohydrates? We've done a discussion on carbohydrates, so I believe that everybody, one way or the other, that has been listening to us, this should be an easy question for you. But the three types of carbohydrates that we know of are fiber, starchy food, and polished sugars, right? So sugars, starchy food, and fiber. These are the three classes of carbohydrates that we know of. So any carbohydrate that you can consume falls within these three categories. And it is important because not all carbohydrates are bad. It's like fat. Not all fats are bad. There are a few things that are bad by themselves. Some of them are like smoking. There's nothing good about smoking. So it's one of the few things in the world that you never find any good thing about it, and that is smoking, especially smoking cigarettes, right? So with these three categories of carbohydrates, we know that the best is the fibers. And why is that so? It is based on the glycemic index, right? That we're going to define. So a glycemic index is defined as how quickly the sugar that is in the carbohydrate is released into your blood. That is how we define glycemic index. So we're going to show you something that we pick from the internet just to illustrate this point. So you see over here that the blood sugar is very steady in you. But if you look at somebody with a carbohydrate with a high glycemic index, what happens is that once you eat within an hour, and generally within 30 minutes, the blood sugar, the sugar is released quickly into the blood, and the blood glucose level is very high. So food or carbohydrates, I want to lay emphasis on this, because what happened in America is that they started talking to us. We'll bring back the thing to you, but what happened in America is that fat got a bad name, and rightly so. So people who started moving away from high fat food And you know what they did? They ended up going to high carbohydrate diet. And that was a worse decision than the fat food, because in your body, the process by which you form fat in your body starts with glucose. So if you are not eating fat, yet you are eating glucose, it ends up in the same way. So avoiding high fat diet and eating high carbohydrate diet, especially a carbohydrate diet that has got a high glycemic index, it ends up the same. I will strongly encourage you to go and listen to our discussion about fat, and for you to understand that the process in our body by which our body makes fat, it starts with glucose. So when you eat fat, you don't go end up with glucose. But when you eat glucose, you end up with fat in addition to the glucose. So some of the carbohydrates that we consume, you have the right to consume carbohydrate diet. But our goal is that you have to understand, if you're going to consume carbohydrates, you need to know the glycemic index of the carbohydrate so that you consume the appropriate carbohydrate. Once again, all food components are important. Your food should be made up of carbohydrates, it should be made up of fats, it should be made up of what? It should be made up of protein, so that you have a balanced diet. Whenever you skip one of them, it leads only to problems. So identifying the appropriate fat, identifying the appropriate carbohydrate is what is going to help you. And today the emphasis is on carbohydrate. And in carbohydrates, we'll talk about glycemic index. Because the glycemic index, they define the carbohydrates. So why are we talking about glycemic index? Because in April, I think April of this year, in 2021, they published an article in New England Journal where they looked at the 5 continents of the earth where people are living on, and they looked at what happens to people in terms of death and other adverse cardiovascular events, specifically death from cardiovascular causes, stroke, and heart attacks. And they compared people in terms of their glycemic index and heart attack. And the trial the trial showed across the board that people with higher glycemic index have a higher probability of dying, getting stroke, or having a heart attack. So that is why the issue about glycemic index is critical and important for everybody that consumes carbohydrate. And I believe you do. And it is important for you to know what goes into your food and make the appropriate decision. Very important. As I said, you can reference it, published in New England Journal, 2021. I think that was in April of this year. So we already know that whenever you consume a carbohydrate that has a high glycemic index, it leads to greater diabetes. That was already known. But this new paper has added more knowledge that not only does it give diabetes, but when you consume food that are high in glycemic index, and later on we'll talk about another thing, not only does it lead to diabetes, but it also can lead to bad cardiovascular outcome, that is bad heart consequences, which includes dying from a heart problem, or having a heart attack, having stroke, or even increased death from non-cardiovascular causes. So that is why today we are talking about glycemic index. Very, 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 very important topic. And I will encourage you that as we go on a short break, you will invite somebody to join us as we continue on our discussion on this all-important topic to me.
This is Zoe Light Radio.
Welcome to Advanced Cardiovascular Institute and White Oak Cardiovascular Center. This is a place that you can be assured of evidence-based, patient-centered, and compassionate care. What does it all mean? It means that when you come to Advanced Cardiovascular Institute and White Oak Cardiovascular Center, we do not see you as a patient, but we will see you as a member of our family. Therefore, we treat you the same way we treat our family members. That is why at this place, we have taken measures to make sure that you are being treated with the highest care, and more importantly, with people that are qualified to do what they are supposed to do. If you look at our rooms, you realize that we've made room for any condition, including whether there is a pandemic or not. Additionally, you also see that we have a staff that also cares for you. So as you come here, we don't see you once again just as a patient, but we'll see you as a family. As I said, everything that we eat has got a glycemic index. So we're going to look at them and show them to you. So as you see in this picture, the first thing that we want to say is that a food that has got low glycemic index is that it is less than 55. That means as quickly as it gets into your blood, it's less than 55. And if it's medium, it is between 56 to 69. And when it's more than 70, then in that case, it's a high glycemic index. So if you look at this diagram, you realize that vegetables, and that is why I always tell my wife and tell my children, when I eat salad, I feel so good. So if you look at it, when you look at the vegetables, and everybody can like one of them. One of my patients showed me a lot of peppers yesterday. I said, boy, my belly can't handle pepper. That's my side effect. I'm sorry. But I know somebody who can endure pepper like nothing. But if you look at lettuce, if you look at broccoli, if you look at all of them, lettuce, cucumber, I love cucumber, it's so good. They have one of the lowest glycemic index. It's glycemic index of 15. The only thing that comes close to this one is soya bean. Beans have very good glycemic index, especially soya beans. So it is very good to consume spinach. So if you don't like salad, the Ghanaians who are listening to me and other people from Africa and other places, I know you like spinach. Spinach is very good. It's got a very low glycemic index, 15. And you know what I love about this? Virtually every component of salad that we consume, apart from the bad salad dressing we put on, the worst thing about it is the salad dressing, is glycemic index of 15. Very nice. Chickpeas have got a glycemic index of 33. But it is double that of soya bean. So that's why soya bean is very good, because it's got a low glycemic index. And if you are diabetic or you are pre-diabetic, these are the kinds of food you want to eat. You must stay within this zone of these food that have got low glycemic index. And the cucumbers, the broccolis, the spinach, the tomato, and I've talked to men. Tomato contains something that is also good for the prostate. So it's something that I will encourage you to go for. Okay? And then let me come to the other things here. Stay there. Something that we don't talk about, because this is very important, It's very important, especially if you... Yogurt. Oh, yogurt. If you love yogurt, it's good. Yogurt has a low glycemic index. So far as you consume the yogurt in the appropriate amount, because we're going to talk about glycemic load. So you realize that the yogurt glycemic index is as low as what? Vegetables. Actually lower than vegetables. So if you're eating yogurt, don't feel bad. Just that don't eat too much. If you eat too much, that's a problem. If you compare yogurt to ice cream has a glycemic index of 61. Compared to yogurt, plain yogurt, that is 14. So low-fat yogurt, fantastic. Great glycemic index. And this is what I always talk about. If you consider soya bean milk here, soya milk compared to soya beans itself, just the processing doubled the glycemic index. And these are very important, so that if you go out there and you're shopping, you want to shop for low glycemic index food. That is, let your bowl, let your shipping no your shopping cart, let your shopping cart be full of more of the vegetables. And then you can get some yogurt, and that is very good. Chocolate is great. Chocolate milk is about 35. My children love chocolate milk. Fruit yogurt is a little bit of a problem, and that is a problem we have now. We don't have a lot of plain yogurt, but plain yogurt is very good. Or low-fat yogurt is very, 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 very good. Let me tell you another thing that has got low glycemic index is my favorite. Peanuts. Peanuts. Peanuts, you got to be careful. I love peanuts. If you come to my home, there's always a box or two of peanuts. I've got to get peanuts on my table. Peanuts have a glycemic index of 21. One of the lowest you can ever get. It's actually lower than dry beans. So, if you are big on keeping your glycemic index of all the things that you want to go for as your first, you realize that the yogurts may be good and the peanuts is clearly the star in this area. Peanuts contain a lot of calories, so you got to keep the amounts low. But if you don't want to raise your blood sugars very high, this is a fantastic one for you to be able to go there. So once again, within all the groups, vegetables are good. The dairy in terms of yogurts are also good. And definitely the peanuts is something that you want to go to. Now let us go to another area here. We are not done yet, so we're going to keep this picture because we're not done. Let's come to fruits. I love fruits. I love fruits. I love fruits. I love fruits a lot. But fruits is a catch-22. I had a patient who had very bad diabetes, and I asked her, what happened? He said, they told me to eat fruits. So I was eating fruits in big amounts every day. I said, okay, no wonder he ended up with diabetes. Okay, so this is the issue. If you look at the fruits, something like watermelon has got very high glycemic index, but the glycemic load of watermelon is lower. So watermelon is good. So pineapple has got high glycemic index. So it is not bad I prefer to consume pineapple itself rather than pineapple juice because the juices are totally different. The things that we're talking about here, we're talking about what? We're talking about the fruit itself. We're not talking about the fruit juice. So fruit juices are not the same as the fruits. So you realize that, compared to vegetables and compared to even peanuts, fruits are good, but the one that has got a low glycemic index generally is apple. Then as you move from apple to orange, orange has a glycemic index of 44, but orange juice that is out there have very high glycemic index. So that is what you want to consume the fruit rather than consume the fruit juices that are out there. Now let us come to the big one. Big one. What are the glycemic index? Okay, now let us look at them. I want to start from the West. The West. We want to stay on that picture again. We'll bring back this one. I want to talk about the West. Those of you who love white bagel, I just want you to know. And frosted cornflakes. White bagel and frosted cornflakes. Let me tell you this. It's got a glycemic index that will blow your mind. They use I'm not saying it. In the world, the standard for the highest glycemic index is white bread. But it looks like white bagel is worse than white bread. I don't know how it's able to beat it. But I will strongly tell you that if you are becoming pre-diabetic, and I can tell you, I know a lot of people who came from Africa who had no diabetic person in their family, and now almost the entire family has diabetes. And I can tell you is this, because when they used to live in Africa, they didn't get any white bagel to eat. Here they eat bagel every day. And bagel has the highest glycemic index, hands down. If you want to eat bagel, I want to be very emphatic. Go for the wheat one. That will do you a whole lot of good. So, as you see, carbohydrates and starch are the ones that have got the highest glycemic index. So, what are the ones that have lower? People give a lot of things bad name, but they are not that bad. Look at spaghetti. If you look at spaghetti, spaghetti has got a glycemic index of 42. So you can enjoy it. I tell people who don't like brown rice that if you don't like brown rice, you can go to what? Wild rice. Wild rice is not that bad. It's about 57. So that is not bad. But when you begin to cross even whole wheat bread still has a really high glycemic index. So there is very little room to maneuver. You know, sometimes I love oatmeal. Oatmeal is what? Oatmeal has still got a high glycemic index. And that is why we are saying that when you want to consume these polished food, what you want to do is to consume them in moderate amounts rather than let your food be full more of carbohydrates and food that has got low glycemic index. And then when you are making choices, you realize that spaghetti is not bad over here. Wild rice is not bad over here. Those are the ones that you want to do. White rice, unpolished white rice is not that bad. But the polished white rice is where we have a problem. So some of us, they enjoy couscous. People from North Africa, couscous is almost the same as white rice. But that is not bad. But the ones that you clearly see, I will encourage everybody. The warning that I want to sound, white bread, white bagel. These are the ones you really want to run away from as much as possible. And that is going to help us. So here the discussion is about glycemic index. But we will take a short break and come back here. And is it all about glycemic index or there is something more? Yes, there is something more. And that is what I want you to wait and listen to it. Because the whole decision cannot be based on the glycemic index. The decision is both the glycemic index and glycemic load. So I will come back and use the case of watermelon to make an analysis why you need a glycemic load and not only the glycemic index in making the appropriate food choices, especially when it comes to carbohydrate. Because when you looked at the picture that we just showed, the problem about glycemic index is about carbohydrates. Whether it's a starchy food or high fiber, the strength of high fiber food is because is due to the fact that they have lower glycemic index. But that is not enough. That is not enough at all. It is important for us to look at glycemic load, and that is going to help us to make good decisions. So we'll go for a short break and come back and talk about glycemic index and glycemic load.
This is Zoe Light Radio.
Welcome to Advanced Cardiovascular Institute and White Oak Cardiovascular Center. This is a place that you can be assured of evidence-based, patient-centered, and compassionate care. What does it all mean? It means that when you come to Advanced Cardiovascular Institute and White Oak Cardiovascular Center, we do not see you as a patient, but we will see you as a member of our family. Therefore, we treat you the same way we treat our family members. That is why at this place, we have taken measures to make sure that you are being treated with the highest care and more importantly, with people that are qualified to do what they are supposed to do. If you look at our rooms, you realize that we've made room for any condition, including whether there is a pandemic or not. Additionally, we also see that we have a staff that also cares for you. So as you come here, we don't see you once again just as a patient, but we'll see you as a family. This
is Zoe Light Radio.
This is Dr. Isaac Opoku-Asare, and this is Healthy Cardiovascular Lifestyle that we're talking about. So we talked about glycemic index, which is the rate at which the sugar that is in the food that you're consuming rises in your blood. How quickly your blood sugar rises when you eat a particular type of food. But that is not enough, because food should also be seen in terms of glycemic load. So what is glycemic load? Glycemic load is your glycemic index plus how much carbohydrate you get per serving of that food multiplied by 100. So let's make it easy this way. So your glycemic index, let's use watermelon. Your glycemic index for watermelon is 71. The total amount of sugar that you're going to get from the watermelon per serving is ultimately low. So though watermelon has a higher glycemic index, it's got a lower glycemic load. That means the total amount of sugar that will ultimately come to you once you eat a serving of watermelon is ultimately low. So what is important of such food? The strength of such a food is the fact that when you eat it, it can get your energy up. And in the long run, the amount of sugars that are going to be in your body is not that much. So that is why it is important to look at the glycemic load. Certain foods have a lower glycemic index, but their glycemic load is very high. When you have such a food, at the end of the day, though they may have low glycemic index, they have a higher glycemic load. Let me give you an example. An example is spaghetti. If you eat spaghetti, right? If you look at the glycemic index of spaghetti, based on our previous picture, the glycemic index of spaghetti was 42. So you may say, okay, then spaghetti is the best, I should go for it. But per serving of spaghetti that will be given to you, if you eat the whole serving of that spaghetti, and most of the time we eat 3, most Americans eat minimum of 2 servings per food. Most of us will eat 3 servings. That's what it is. What is going to happen is that though the spaghetti had a glycemic index of 42, which is not that, which is considered is less than 55 or low glycemic index, the total amount of sugar that will end up coming to you is actually high. So spaghetti has got a low glycemic index but a high glycemic load. Let me give you another example. Macaroni. So macaroni, if you eat macaroni, it's not going to get into your blood sugar quickly. But at the end of the day, the total amount of carbohydrate, the sugar that will be released into your body, in terms of carbohydrate, will be high. So not only is it important to look at the glycemic index, it is also important to look at the glycemic load. So on polar sides of this diagram, it is important just to let you understand is that spaghetti and macaroni are on the side of low glycemic index, yet high glycemic load. If you're going to eat such a food, you eat small amounts. And you look at watermelon, that has got a high glycemic index, yet a lower glycemic load. You can eat such a food in moderate amount. Not too much. Because it gets things quickly into your blood circulation. And, you know, a lot of parents, they worry about sugar rush and other things, right? You can understand that if the child eats certain type of fruits, the sugar in them is never the same. Eating a grapefruit with a glycemic index of 20 is totally different from eating watermelon that I can get a blood sugar in quickly, though ultimately the watermelon is lower. So let us look at, we talked about the ranges for glycemic index. That is, what I'm doing is more theoretical. But we're going to show you a diagram. You see the diagram behind me. We're just going to make it a little bit bigger. For people who are on the borderline for diabetes, you need to consider both. That you are ending up, if you are consuming something, you prefer to consume a food that has got both a low glycemic load and a glycemic index. Because at the end of the day, the amount of sugars that come to you is on the lower side. But if you are not a diabetic, your emphasis is on your glycemic load, because that is very important. But I will say that based on the data that we have. So we're going to look at some of the food that is out here. Then I'm going to talk about other things that are important. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. This is the data that has been there for some time, but it is very, very, very useful. If I were you, I'm going to get it and I'm going to put it on my kitchen or on a kitchen table or your fridge. It's going to help you a lot. You know, let me tell you a few stories here. I have had, over the last few years, you know, I have had a gentleman that is as slim as, he's as slim as you can ever imagine. And his brother died of heart attack. So when his brother died of heart attack, he went to see his primary care doctor, who did a stress test on him. And the stress test was abnormal. And the stress test was abnormal. He came to me and I told him, the test results is very bad. When I went to do the cardiac catheterization in this patient, almost all the major blood vessels in his heart have been blocked. I want to give you the opportunity to call us with your questions, and our producer will put our number on the system later on. If you have any questions, you can send it to us and we'll try to answer them in our next session. You can be slim and very sick. And this is what happened to this person. He had to go for open heart surgery. What is important are the numbers that we're looking at. The cholesterol level, your hemoglobin A1C, the things that we talk about. You know, most of the time when I begin this session, I talk about the pillars of ideal cardiovascular health. And the pillars of ideal cardiovascular health, what are they? We talked about keeping your cholesterol proper. For me, a good cholesterol is where your bad cholesterol is less than 100 and your good cholesterol is more than 50, right? Keeping your blood sugars under control. Hemoglobin A1C, definitely less than what? Less than 5.6, if not less than 5.6, less than 7. Your fasting blood sugar less than 100. And we also talked about your blood pressure less than 120. So this is the number that you can WhatsApp us or text us any questions that you have about this particular topic, and then we'll go back, we'll answer them at our next session before we go to the next topic. So I'm laying emphasis on these principles, and we'll talk about exercise as a very critical and important. Then we'll talk about food, appropriate dietary patterns. So appropriate dietary pattern is a cornerstone. I tell people, if you can do appropriate dietary patterns and as well as exercise, if you take the genetic factors that play probably account for 60-70% of all the things that happen to us, just being able to undertake appropriate dietary pattern and exercise can account for taking care of the cholesterol, the diabetes, and the blood sugar, and the blood pressure. All these ones, doing these two things, can go a very long way to be able to help you. So it is critical and important that you do that. And I laid emphasis on this particular issue because it helps us to look at this next discussion about the types of food and their glycemic index. Because we tell patients, make the appropriate dietary one. dietary decisions. That is, I call it dietary discretion. The concept of discretion is deciding not to eat something and deciding to eat the other thing. Dietary discretion. Very important for you to do, right? And this particular table that we're going to show you will help you in making that decision. Because this table, as I said, from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, will go a long way to help you make appropriate dietary choices. So let us go here. So you realize that we have low glycemic index on the glycemic index is on the horizontal, that is the upper part. And on my left side, I have the glycemic load. So if you are ever going to eat, make a decision today. Anybody that is listening to me, if you want to eat breakfast, pick an all-bran cereal. Don't go for frosted cornflakes. Because I'm going to make practical decisions here. It's not that I'm against any of these things, but this is what I'm not saying it. This is what they showed. Why am I saying that? Because if you go for an all-bran cereal, it has the lowest glycemic index and the lowest glycemic load. You can't go wrong. You can't. Yet, I know somebody who came to this country from another country. No, there are generations of people in that family. Nobody ever had diabetes. And when this person came into this country, the person's favorite food was what? Cornflakes. And that person loves the frosted cornflakes. The person ended up with diabetes. Full-blown diabetes. So I'm giving you the two sides. When you pick this breakfast, this is a good breakfast for you to have. In this same category, apple. Apple have a low glycemic index, a low glycemic load. Carrots, peanuts, strawberry. And what to me is the most surprising, because I never thought, my wife loves this. And I've always been condemning, I've always been criticizing her. Sweet corn, you can't go wrong. So now when I go out, I'm going to buy sweet corn and enjoy it because I love it, but I was scared to eat it. So you see that the sweet corn is very important here because it's got a low glycemic index and that is able to help you. Whereas the potato, please. Why am I talking about potato so much? Because all the chips out there, they are made up of potato. So if you are somebody that eats outside a lot, if you are somebody that doesn't prepare food a lot, anytime you eat and then you add the potato chips, you have added a food that has got a high glycemic index and high glycemic load. And according to the paper that is in the New England Journal, it is associated, remember this, high glycemic load, glycemic index is associated with increased death from heart-related issues, heart attacks, strokes, and death, even not from what? Heart issues. So this is very important for all of us to be able to make these things. It's very important for you and for me. So let us look at other things here. So in between that, food that has got a low glycemic index, I always want to keep myself on the low glycemic index. Food that has got low glycemic index, yet at the end of the day, it's got a little bit of glycemic load. I always tell people it's orange juice. I use orange juice as an example. So bananas are good. But if you have to make a choice between a banana and apple, it's a home run for apple. Because bananas, though they have a low glycemic index, they have a higher glycemic load. It's not that bad. It's just above that, but that is what it is. So apple juice. Whereas apple itself, eat the apple, not the apple juice. Whereas apple itself has a low glycemic index, low glycemic load. Apple juice has a higher glycemic what? load. So when you eat an apple, which I do, and I encourage my children to do, you are not going to have your total amount of sugars in your body is not going to be high. But when you drink the apple juice, then you're going to increase the total amount of sugars that you get. So this is where these are so it's not too bad, but remember where you stand. So rather eat the apple rather than go for the apple juice. I'm not going to go to macaroni and spaghetti. I told you about them. They have low glycemic index, but when you eat them, especially in big quantities, it can create problems for you. So let me come to something that sits right in the middle. That I have patients coming to me. But there are patients coming to me and they said, I can't eat this. And I said, okay. Then why don't you consider that? Wild rice. Wild rice sits right in the middle. It's not good, it's not bad, it's in between. Because if you consider wild rice and not the wild rice has both moderate glycemic index and moderate glycemic load. So if you don't have diabetes, that is not too bad. You sort of sit in the center. And freshly prepared potatoes are not bad, right? But not the fried ones. No, that's not good. You really need to be careful about that. So that's where it says. But I want to use something here that is very important. If you look at this diagram, you see pineapple. Pineapple has a low glycemic index. It's fruit. But at the same time, if you consume pineapple too much, it's going to be a problem. This particular patient that I'm talking about.
This episode is sponsored by Zenith Christ Family Chapel. ZCFC is a scripture-based church located in Spencerville, Maryland. Join us every Sunday in person or live on YouTube at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. God bless you.
This particular patient, she loved cantaloupe. Cantaloupe has a high and what? If you consume cantaloupes in too much, cantaloupe has got low glycemic index, but it's got a moderate glycemic load. This patient, she loved pineapple, she loved cantaloupe, she loved all the food that gives moderate glycemic load. You want to limit the moderate glycemic load. So why am I saying this? Because the fact that you are eating fruits doesn't mean that you are eating what? Healthy. What kind of fruit are you picking? How much of the... If you are eating pineapple in small amounts, is very good. Because pineapple has got a higher glycemic load. It's got a relatively higher glycemic load. So you want to eat them in small amounts. Cantaloupe, the same thing. So that is why these things are important. Because it is very sad listening to the story of this particular lady, where she was consuming the cantaloupes and all those things in very high amounts. And it led to a problem. Now, let's go to the big one. I love this one, I love this one, I love this one. You know, there are two main reasons why you need to be careful. Let's look at popcorn. Popcorn. You remember that we said sweet corn is good, but let's look at popcorn. Sorry. The problem with popcorn is this. Some of the popcorn in this country, they are prepared with trans fat. And trans fats are not good. I say avoid them. So that is number one. A lot of people have given popcorn a bad name, but you should not give it a bad name. Popcorn is like watermelon. Popcorn has got low glycemic index. Very low. So you can enjoy your popcorn without having problems. But remember this about popcorn. Popcorn has high, I'm repeating this, popcorn has high glycemic load. If you consume popcorn, you should consume them in very small amounts. So some of us, when we go to the movie theaters, we like the large size popcorn. And you know the problem with the large size? There's the one that you can refill. There are 3 types of popcorn in the movie theater. There's a small, there is the medium, and there's a large. If you buy the small or the medium, you cannot refill. But if you buy the large, you can always refill. And usually the difference between those popcorn is $1 each. Let me tell you what a large size popcorn will do to you. It will kick up your blood sugar like nothing. And whilst you're in the movie theater and consuming the popcorn, especially the large one, it gets your blood sugar super high. But it doesn't do it whilst you're watching it. Whilst you go home and sleep, where you are doing nothing, that is where you get a problem of the popcorn. So it tells you that everything can be consumed, but it can be consumed in an appropriate way. If you're at home and you get a little bit of popcorn and you're eating, there is no downside to it. Popcorn goes very slowly in your body. It doesn't cause problems. It's the same thing. For certain people who come from Ghana and other places, kenke. Kenke is corn, right? But if the kenke is made up of unpolished corn, you don't have a problem. But if the kenke is made up of polished corn, don't eat it. It's got a high glycemic index and a high glycemic load. Stay away from it. I'm saying that because I've seen too many people with problems. So enjoy your kenke that is made with unpolished sugars, and that is going to help you. Let me finish by telling you, everybody should keep these ones. I've gone through, and that should be fine. You see, when you look at white rice has got, the reason why we bash white rice a lot is that white rice has got a high glycemic load. When you eat white rice, the only thing that is worse than white rice is white bread and white bagel. So if you want to eat white rice, eat them in very small amounts. White rice and couscous. So let me give you some good news. There are certain things you can enjoy in life. One of them is chocolate. Why am I saying this? If you want to snack, you can snack on chocolate. Chocolate has good glycemic index. So far as the sugar content of the chocolate is good, it should be fine. So it's something that you want to do. I've told you, if you're going to make a choice about yogurt, low-fat yogurt has got an excellent glycemic index and relatively good glycemic load. So that is a choice that I want you to make. That is going to help you. I want to touch on some simple ones that is going to. So people want to snack. If you want to pick a snack, as I said, chocolate is good. Small amount of potato. Even if you eat potato chips, take a small amount of potato chips. Small amount, very small. That's not too bad. That is going to help you. So let us look at sugars that we put in our food, right? The polished sugars that we take in our food is the worst. I will encourage you to switch to honey. Why is honey important? Why is honey important? Listen to me, this is the reason. The glycemic index of honey is 61. The glycemic index of sugar by itself is 103. Plus or minus 3. So if you want to put something in your coffee, you're better off putting honey in there. My wife used to talk about it a lot. I didn't know the scientific basis behind it. She encourages my kids to use honey rather than pure sugar. This is the basis of it. It's almost half the glycemic index, honey, compared to sugar itself. And of course, the reason why apples are good is because they contain fructose. That has got very low glycemic index. So, even ice cream is not bad if you consume ice cream in small amounts. The glycemic index of ice cream is very close to that of milk. It's not too bad. It's not too far away from that of milk. But if you consume ice cream in large amounts, ice cream has got a high glycemic load. That means ultimately the amount that you're going to have is going to be bad. So let me summarize and finish today's discussion that all foods are good if they are consumed appropriately. So if you're going to make a choice, you have a choice to make in terms of breakfast. Let your breakfast be all wheat or all brown cereal. That is going to go a long way to help you. Getting slices of apple with that will help you. If you want to snack on apple, low glycemic index. If you want to snack, you can snack on peanuts, very small amount. Enjoy watermelon, but eat watermelon in the minutest amount. Remember that white rice, white bread, and white bagel have got both higher glycemic index and a higher glycemic load, which the papers in New England Journal showed that they can lead to worse cardiovascular outcomes. I hope this will help you to enjoy your sweet corn in appropriate amounts, knowing this, that it is healthy. Encourage you to prepare your own food at home. Because as you saw here, whenever you change the fruit to fruit juice, the glycemic index goes up and the glycemic load goes up. But when you consume the food in its raw state, most of the problems that comes with processing, you escape them. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope this has been a good discussion. Please send all your questions and anything that you have, contributions, to the number that we showed, and we'll promise that when we come back next week, we will answer those questions first before we go to the interesting topics that we have got loaded for you for this end of the year. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless my producer, my listeners, and everybody who believes in the good work that we're doing here. Good night.
Thanks for listening to God's Rhythm. Tune in every Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to learn how to protect your heart. God bless you.